of the Beatles and individual reminiscences of John, Paul, George, and Ringo. His legendary music career began in 1964 as one half of the singing duo Peter and Gordon, who amassed 9 top 20 records during their career. Their debut single, A World Without Love, a song given to them by Paul McCartney, went to #1 in over 30 countries, including the US and UK. In 1968, Mr. Asher became head of talent for the Beatles' newly formed record company, Apple Records, where he found, signed, and produced James Taylor and worked closely with the Beatles on their individual projects. As a producer, Mr. Asher has worked with many legendary artists, including Linda Ronstadt, James Taylor, who were on the cover of Rolling Stones magazine with him, coolest thing ever, and has been awarded 37 gold albums and 22 platinum in the US and many more internationally. Mr. Asher has produced 13 Grammy Award-winning recordings, and in 1977 and '89 was honored individually with the Grammy Award for Producer of the Year. He won a further Grammy in the category of Comedy Album of the Year for his production work with the incomparable Robin Williams. Peter Asher was ordered a CBE, Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire. I just like saying that, so I keep it in the intro. In 2015, by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth. He continues to perform primarily with his multimedia show, Peter Asher, a musical memoir of the 60s and beyond. And he also tours on occasion, as he is right now, with guitar great Albert Lee as an acoustic duo, and with old friend Jeremy Clyde of Chad and Jeremy. The Beatles from A to Z grew out of his popular radio program From Me to You on Sirius XM's The Beatles channel, where he shares memories and insights about the Fab Four and their music. Here he weaves his recollections into whimsical alphabetical journey that focuses not only on songs whose titles start with each letter, but also on the recurrent themes in the Beatles' music, the instruments they played, the innovations they pioneered, the artists who influenced them, the key people in their lives, and the cultural events of the time. Few can match Peter Asher for his fresh and personal perspective on the Beatles, and no one is a more congenial and entertaining guide to their music. And now, we welcome here on stage for another full house here in Plainville, Massachusetts. Joining Peter this evening is Leland Sklar, legendary bass guitarist. Sklar has more than 2,000 albums to his credit and still counting, and is considered to be one of the A players in the highly selective LA rock music community, where the competition for recording dates is fierce and only the strongest survive. His very recognizable bass playing style has been heard on hits by Linda Ronstadt, James Taylor, Hall & Oates, Jackson Browne, Phil Collins, Clint Black, Reba McEntire, Dolly Parton, Michael Jackson, and George Strait, just to name a few. It was toward the end of the 60s, and after completing his education at California State University, Northridge, as a music art major, that Sklar met James Taylor, and they started doing some gigs. They thought they might be playing together for about a month, but then Taylor's Fire and Rain sessions became a huge hit record, and Sklar's career began to gain steam. Sklar's first sessions were with Taylor, and then the buzz surrounding this new bass player didn't take long to spread around Hollywood, and suddenly, there was an icon in the making. Lee will be signing his hilarious book, Everybody Loves Me. In 2004, Phil Collins hired him for his farewell tour. Lee brought a camera to make a photo album of everyone who made the tour happen, from the caterers to the drivers to the security guards. His first shot was of his bass tech, Steve Chinner Winstead. Chinner flipped him the bird with delightedly. Over the course of 16 years, he amassed 11,000 photos of middle fingers from all over the world. Fans, collaborators, and colleagues, movie stars and rock legends, alongside hundreds of the forgotten faces that populate life on the road. People that share a moment or an evening and then disappear forever. But something about flipping the bird made the interactions less anonymous. In the sea of anonymity, they lent the moments a jolt of miraculous hilarity. They are joined this evening by singer-songwriter Kate Taylor, who is a member of what Rolling Stone magazine once called the first family of rock, the set of musical siblings which includes Alex, James, Livingston, Hugh, and Kate Taylor. In 1971, Kate released her well-received debut album, Sister Kate, a recording that was produced by Peter Asher and featuring such prominent musicians as Danny Korchmar, Leland Sklar, and Russ Kunkel. For the first time since then, she has reconvened with some of the same players on Sister Kate, including producer Peter Asher, for a new record, Why Wait, that marks the 50th anniversary of her debut, and we get to celebrate with her. They are playing on the Cape this weekend in West Yarmouth at the Music Room, and you can get tickets online. I saw them. I might get some myself. It'll be 2 days of celebrations for the 50th anniversary. So, without further ado, I will stop because I think I read most of my long intro. Everyone, please give a spectacularly warm welcome to Peter Asher, Leland Sklar, and Kate Taylor.
Thank you so much. It was an amazing intro, because I was going to come up here and talk a little about Kate and about Leland, but you now know everything about them, I think. It was brilliant. Thank you so much. First of all, just of course, I'd like to say that how exciting it is to be back here. You know, once we knew we were going to be in this neighborhood and have this gig coming up on the Cape, we were more than happy to fit in an extra day so that I could come and visit my favorite bookshop, because this place is extraordinary. The people here are brilliant, and I really enjoyed. I mean, Jeff is to be commended for this whole operation. It's such a great story, and it's such a great shop. And it's so weird that I was evidently the last person to do an event here before the plague struck. And then, so it makes it extra fun to be the first person to come back. Now we're here because we're all on the road together. We've been doing some shows, and we've got this show tomorrow. But our lives have been connected, you know, in so many different ways, and continue to be. So we're all working together on this tour. But on this occasion, we're here because of three very distinct sort of products, I suppose, in a way, that we're plugging, you know. Because my book, you know, came out a couple of years ago now, but then came out in paperback relatively recently, and I'm here to plug that a little bit. Meanwhile, Leland has a very different kind of book that is extremely expensive, but is very well worth it. It's hilarious. It's got thousands of people in it. You'll recognize tons of your favorite stars, from Bruce Springsteen to whoever, you know, whoever your favorite people are. They're all in there, you know, and I'm even in there myself, I'm proud to say. And Kate's in there too. So that's one of our connections. We're all in Leland's book, which is a very privileged place to be, as you will agree once you have a look at it. And we're also here because Kate has an album out, as you just heard, which we did recently. And it comes out pretty much today, I think. And of course, Leland played on the album. So the interconnections are infinite. And I think probably the best thing to do is to let each of them tell you a bit more about that project, you know, the book and the record. And Kate can talk about some of the other musicians who played on the record, and when we did it, how we did it, and so on. The good thing was, as Kate will tell you, we did do it all together. I mean, it wasn't one of those ones where we layered people in from different locations all the time. We worked out a very strict COVID protocol system with masks and people in different rooms, but connected to the same recording studio, so we could actually safely work, but with the whole band playing at once in the traditional way, as Kate will tell you. And in Leland's case, obviously, he can tell you the story of how the book started and how huge it actually is. And you probably have a whole bunch of new ones, right? In fact, by the way, I should mention the Unlikely Strummers, the brilliant ukulele band, just played a couple of songs for me upstairs. And of course, Leland did take the opportunity of getting all these charming women playing the ukulele. So I think we can safely assume that Volume 2 is in the works already. So why don't we start, Kate? Why don't you talk a little bit about, you know, about maybe the old album, the time that it went by, what happened, and why we made a new one and stuff like that.
All right, well, hello everybody. It's so nice to be here. Yes, I met Peter back in 1969. I went, you know, Peter and had met James, and James had played him some songs, and then Peter had realized his brilliance and took him to the Beatles label to record. And I thought that it was very important that somebody from the family go over and make sure they were taking good care of James. and so I happily, gleefully flew over the ocean to visit with James. I'm not sure how long I was there, a couple of weeks, I don't know, but it was a lot of fun. And James took me to Apple Records, and when we were climbing up the stairs to Peter's office, I met Ringo Starr in the stairwell. And you never forget your first Beatle. But anyway, then I got into Peter's office, and you know, I had been a huge Peter and Gordon fan, and so this was, you know, it's one of those rare moments when I was speechless. And I was talking, you know, met Peter, and we you know, I got to see that, yes, in fact, they were all taking very good care of James. And Peter invited us out to a tea party at his beautiful country cottage, and this was in, you know, early June, and there was a empty swimming pool in the backyard, and the swimming pool was lined with beautiful stones. And James and I climbed down into this pool, and we're singing some songs, you know, that we'd sung since we were kids together. You know, maybe there was a Staple Singers tune, and perhaps that Mockingbird, and that Charlie and Inez Fox tune. I'm not sure what we sang, but you know, you can't miss singing with James Taylor in an echo chamber. So anyway, I you know, I eventually flew back home by then I was living out on Martha's Vineyard. And a few weeks later, the phone rang, and I picked it up, and it's Peter saying that he is in fact moving to Los Angeles, and did I want to make a record? And I said, let me think about it, yes. And we went to, I flew to Los Angeles, and we made some recordings, some demos. I think this was probably when I met Leland for the first time, and in the studio, and you know, Peter took the demos to his friend Ahmed Erdogan, who was running Atlantic Records, and they signed me up, and we, you know, we had at it and made what ended up being Sister Kate, and that was released in 1971, long before any of you were ever born. But we had then I did a tour, and you know, I came home to the vineyard, and I realized that I really needed some time to ground myself, because I was kind of like the gal with her fingers stuck in the socket, and there was I needed some you know, to just chill a little bit. Well, you know, 6 years later, I was still sleeping in my teepee, when well, you know, the other things happened. I ended up, you know, having a family. Made a few more albums, but you know, over the years. But my main focus became my family and my children and all of that. And then I started to do some more performing back in 2001, 2002. I kind of stepped up the performing, and by the 2010 or something, I had although Peter and I had been connected all of this time, because he worked with James for probably 25 years. He was his producer and his manager, and so Peter really was, or is, a member of the family. And he, you know, I'd see him at concerts, and I'd see him at weddings, and you know, funerals, and all the different family events that we'd have, and it was always nice to connect with him. And I watched him from afar as he made these, you know, incredibly iconic albums, and you know, all this beautiful music that we love. And I always had this daydream and this fantasy that someday, you know, I'd get the chance to work with Peter again. And sure enough, you know, we did some shows. We happened to do some shows together, And then our friend Keith Putney, a mutual friend of ours, reminded Peter, I guess were having a conversation, that it was coming up on the 50th anniversary of Sister Kate, which was our first record. And so, what did we think about starting a new album? Well, the timing couldn't have been more perfect because it was also COVID time, so everybody was sidelined, in LA. So not only did Peter and I get back in the studio and plan a record, but also all the players, the original players from the first record, were available to play on this new record. So I got a chance to connect back up with Leland and Russell Kunkel and Danny Korchmar, and we got the wonderful Albert Lee to play guitar, and Scarlett Rivera plays on there, and Waddy Wachtel, and we had this great adventure. And it really is like an old time, album, it's got 14 tunes, and it has that feel of a live kind of sound because we all played together in the recording studio. So, now here it is, the dream come true. I've got Why Wait, that is actually coming on. The release date is August 6th. And I'm just thrilled. I'm thrilled to have this record. I'm thrilled to be working with Peter and Leland and the gang. And I'm thrilled to be here with you guys today. Thank you so much.
And over to you, Leland. Tell us how it all began, as it were.
It was, I was out on the road in 2004 with Phil Collins, and we were doing his first final farewell tour. Everybody has a first final farewell tour. But there was talk during the course of the tour that Phil was going to retire at the end of the tour. He was just kind of done with it. And I thought, a lot of the crew people, especially, were from all over the world on this. We had about 120 crew people on this tour, and I thought I may never see any of these people again. So I thought I'm going to make a little folder for my computer just to have memories to look back on. Well, they had hired a guy named Steve Winstead to be my bass tech on the tour. Now, I had really never had a bass tech before. I've always done my own gear and everything. And this guy came into the job so overqualified, it was unbelievable. I think he'd just been on a tour with a band where the bass player had 10 basses and wanted new strings every day and all this kind of stuff. And he came to me and he said, "So what do you need? What do you need?" And I said, "Nothing." Nothing. I guess just put my crap on the stage and turn it on and we'll go for it. So I thought I'm gonna take these pictures and see everybody. So luck would have it that the first person I go up to is Chinner, my bass tech, and he's sitting at his laptop working. And I said, "Hey Chinner, give me a smile." And he's just typing and he goes, I looked at it and I went, "Ooh, this is kind of cool." So I got Phil, I got Tony Smith as manager, I got everybody in the band, everybody in the crew, bus drivers, truck drivers, pilots on the planes we were using, everything. Ended up, I think, with about 150 pictures. And I made my little folder and I put it away. And about three years later, I went on the road with the band Toto, and I was thinking, that was kind of cool back then, so maybe I'll do the same thing. Well, it got up to about 300 pictures of people flipping me off. And I would just grab them like that. I wasn't posing people or anything like that. I was just grabbing them before they could deny that I was doing this to them. And it took on a life of its own. And all of a sudden, everywhere I went, I was just grabbing people off the streets. I'd be sitting on a plane and I'd just stand up and I'd have the whole compartment. I'd say, "Come on, give me the finger." And people, "What are you doing?" Come on. Everybody would stick their hands up, baggage claim, you kind of name it. But then every time I would work with different people, I remember when I was working with Barry Manilow, I'd say, "Come on, Barry, give me the finger." And he kind of gave me this real demure little look. I said, "Barry, you can do better than that." And he put on these sunglasses and because it looks like a child molester. It's like so I just kept doing this, and everywhere I went, I would just grab people. I was working with, I've got, Peter's in it, Kate's in it, Livingston's in it, James is in it, Phil Collins is in it, and then people like Charlie Watts and Jeff Beck, and you kind of name it. But I did this in such a way where, to me, it's a reflection of humanity. So I didn't make like a section that's celebrity and a section it's everybody's mixed together. There's somebody like a wino in there that his picture's much bigger than Jay Leno's. But I'm not saying that Jay doesn't drink or anything, but I've actually got probably a little over 12,000 photographs now, and there's about 6,000 in the book. And we did this, and it really, had it not been for the pandemic, this would have never happened, because I had all kinds of work lined up and I would have never had the time to do this. But when the pandemic hit, it's like I looked at my date book and it was like a fart in a hurricane. It just blew away and everything went away. So I met a guy named Richard Tremarchi, who has an art company where he does some publishing, but mostly like high-end, like they'll take people's collections and they'll document their collections and stuff. And I met him at a function and we talked about this, and he said, let's do it, let's just do it. And we started working on it, and I gave him like a hard drive with 12,000 photographs to look at, and we honed it down to this. So we've got this book that I printed a pile of them, and it's been a real labor of love though. Putting this together was really fun. We've got little thematic things going through it and everything. It's like I have Jack Nicholson on one page and Lou Adler on the other, but they both sit together at the Lakers games, so that we did the pages in Lakers yellow and gold and things like that. But so I just it's some kind of fun to have, and I just hope that anybody that gets it just kind of goes through it and enjoys it, because it's a real kind of adventure trying to go, is that really Art Garfunkel, or is that really Sean Penn in there? Because some people are kind of hard to identify, because I grabbed them like in one of these moments. And then after all that, Phil decided to work again. And we just finished the Not Dead Yet tour. So, I mean, it's like you just can't get rid of us. It's like gum on your shoe. So I think that explains the book. But anybody has any questions, I'll answer them for you.
Yeah, I mean, I exactly. I love the book, and it is worth emphasizing that the biggest connection we all have, of course, is just how long the three of us happen to have known each other. So these three distinct projects have just fallen into place, because I've known Kate ever since James introduced me to her and I met the whole Taylor family. And I've known Lee actually since James first told me about you. It was James that actually heard Leland first. And since that time, he became my favorite bass player in the world, in the same way Kate became one of my favorite singers in the world. And Lee's played on more of the records I produced than anybody else by far, and so on. So it's been a very exciting time. And at that point, I think we should probably move on to questions, because we've told you pretty much about why we're here. I haven't talked about my book much, because I've already done that a couple of years ago. But obviously, as you know, it's based on my radio show. I don't know if anybody listens to the radio show on Sirius XM. Thank you very much. And so you can ask questions about any of these various topics. And I know there's a whole written system, but I'm also happy for people to just yell out questions or whatever. There's one in the front row.
Hi, Peter. Saw you the last time you were here. It was a thrill. It's a thrill again. The book is amazing.
Thank you.
The first family of music. How about the royal family of music? Because that would make you the queen.
That's right. That's right. It would. It would.
And I have to settle something with you.
Please.
Your YouTube channel kept me sane during the pandemic. To the point where, first of all, I've been a fan, as a bass player, I've been a fan since forever. And to the point where watching your YouTube channel every day, 7 days a week, ever since this whole thing started, my wife would come behind me and say, oh, you're hanging with your buddy again. So I don't have a question because I know everything there is to know about you. But I would have
just what you just said is payment enough, really. It saved my sanity too. I mean, I've got 600 and I think 50 some videos I've put up since March of last year. And
I've seen them.
yeah, it saved my life to have this to look forward to.
They're always very interesting, even if you don't play the bass or aren't interested in that. Lee just has a lot of interesting stories from so many different eras and so many different people. It's fascinating.
One final comment is that one of the things that you did for me, musically, you're playing with Toto and Phil and Billy Cobham and all this sophisticated stuff, but you bring the same professionalism and the same A-game when you're recording Hill Street Blues theme, or Laughter in the Rain with Neil Sedaka, or I Am Woman with Helen Ray. And that kind of disabused me of my musical snobbery to a great degree. And I'm thrilled to be in your presence.
Thank you so much. One of my favorite projects I've been working on is sitting right next to you, Charles Steinberg right there. We've been working with Charles for a number of years here, and we're having a great time in the studio together.
All right, I'm walking up there. I have a stack of questions.
Okay.
So this question is for you, Peter. Why do you feel Hey Bulldog was not worthy of its rating in your top 100 Beatles songs?
It's so funny. I do this thing, the Beatles top 100, and I do it. It takes hours to write it, and days to write it, and hours to do it. And people take it so seriously. They all vote, and some song jumps up or down 10 places from the previous year. And people go, "Oh, why do you think this happened? And what about this?" So, to be honest, I don't care at all. I mean, the idea of rating them all is a bit silly. I mean, it's fun because anyway you play 100 Beatles songs, it's fun and the music is brilliant, So I kind of, to be honest, I kind of pretend to mind that. So somebody started this thing about Hey Bulldog. It always comes in quite high. And I think it's one of the weakest songs the Beatles have ever done. But it's kind of a silly song in my view. But with all the barking on it and stuff. But I don't actually mind where it is on the damn chart. It doesn't matter to me in the slightest. But so I kind of play along with how seriously people take it and pretend I take it seriously as well. To be honest, they send me the list in order. I read it and I think of something to say about each record. And that's the hard part. But what order it in, I couldn't give a shit.
All right, here is a question for Leland. Any good stories about Jackson Browne?
Well, I think one of the weirdest parts, I just actually glanced down and realized the socks I'm wearing are giving you the finger, so I'm sorry, I apologize for that. I think one of the strangest things was when I got hired to do the first album with Jackson. I kind of thought he was going to be a black R&B artist with a name like Jackson Browne. And I walk in the studio and there's this little skinny white dude in there. But we had a great time working together. Jackson is really another one of those unbelievably gifted songwriters, musicians. And when we did like Dr. My Eyes and songs like that, it was just really a joyous experience. We had a lot of fun when we were doing the Running on Empty tour, because that was one of the more interesting tours from the standpoint that we went out there with music that the audience had never heard. And everybody usually comes to shows to hear the hits of the things they're familiar with, and we really exposed them to a completely new playlist. And recorded every night. There was all kinds of adventures and recording in hotel rooms and on the bus and everything. So. And the thing that was interesting, and I can't remember the name of this charity, but they do a thing every year where they take a song like Stand By Me, and then they go around the world and get artists all over the world to contribute to it. Yeah, it's Playing for Change, that's it. And we just did Dr. My Eyes with Jackson for the new one that's coming up, but the thing that was weird was the band that I'm in right now called The Immediate Family, we were recording in Jackson's studio, and Jackson was hanging out with us, and one of the nights when we finished recording, he said, "You guys want to go cut Dr. My Eyes?" And we went in there, and Russ Kunkel had the same conga drums that he played on the original. I had the same bass I played on the original, and we all kind of sat and looked at each other. It's like 50 years ago we played this song together, and here we are again. And that's the basis for this new one that they're going around the world now, adding artists from all over the world, and that will be out in either October or November. So.
I remember the first time I ever heard Jackson Browne was at David Geffen's house. He had just signed him and invited me up to the house, and Jackson played Jamaica Say You Will, and I was super impressed. He's also an incredibly nice guy and a great friend to us all.
That was awesome. Okay, so here's a question for Peter. Saw your 4th of July spot with Susanna Hoffs. Any truth to the rumor that you are producing a new record with her?
Yes, it is absolutely true. Yeah, we are. We've got a lot of the pre-production already done, and we have some sessions booked, I believe, because you're in them. When I get back, what we did for the 4th of July thing was take a couple of the big Bangles hits, Manic Monday and Eternal Flame, and redo them, without the sort of 80s synths, and did them with a string quartet and stuff. You can find them online, and it worked out pretty well. And we did it completely live, singing and playing and everything all at the same time, and mixed it, and that was it was quite successful. And she was suddenly trending on Twitter and all that kind of stuff, and they downloaded it a lot. So they're going to be on the album as well, those two versions. And then we're working on a bunch of other songs that we're going to do as soon as I'm back from this tour. We've been rehearsing in my house most days with Susanna, who's a friend, and is great. And her husband is great too, Jay Roach. I don't know if you know him, film director. He did all the Austin Powers movies. Yet another bizarre connection. This is a bizarre connection with Austin Powers and me, and now I'm producing the director of the movie's wife. So it's all very roundabout.
Awesome. This question is for Leland. Number one is kind of a two-part question. Did anyone ever say no to Chucking the Bird? And then two, who would you still like to add to your list?
Out of the 12,000, I think there were 10 people who refused to do it. And they said they were doing it on religious reasons. And I just said, well, that explains everything to me right there. And one of them, it was at a big bass player function. And I was getting all the bass players, from Pino Palladino to you name it, everybody. And one of them said no, and then when they realized that everybody else was doing it, they ran up to me and said, I've changed my mind. And I said, I changed my mind too, you're not in the book. I'm not begging for a thing. So that was it. What was the second part? I'm sorry.
Is there anyone else that you'd like to add to?
Oh, anybody. I would love to get a shot of the entire audience. My phone's in there, but I'll run back and get it.
You should get it before the show's over.
Yeah, absolutely. We would love to have you. It could be the cover of the next book.
He already has big plans. I think it'd be kind of funny if that Diary of a Windy Kid author ever shows up. We could get him to flip you the bird. That'd be
Absolutely.
Yes. Oh, of course.
That would kind of be awesome.
I grab everybody. I mean, on one of the gigs we just finished with Phil Collins, I looked backstage and Jane Seymour is sitting there. I got to get Dr. Quinn in here. And she goes, I mean, most people do it because it's all in good nature.
She's a neighbor. She lives just
great.
in Malibu. So.
Excellent. All right, this question is for Peter from Michael. He says, hello. On your excellent productions with Linda Ronstadt, did you just arrange and produce, or were you involved with the selections of the cover songs?
I was very involved with the selection of songs. It was Linda and me jointly. Generally speaking, if you have to take a guess, if it's a slow, moody song, it might have been Linda's idea. If it's a bit more up-tempo, it would have been mine. Linda loves singing slow songs the best, and she sings them brilliantly, but she sings everything brilliantly. But so if it was a rock and roll song or a Buddy Holly song, it's probably me, or a rock and roll cover. If it's something, her favorite albums that she did were the ones with Nelson Riddle, doing the classic songs with the big orchestra and everything. She loved that stuff. Even though, to my mind, she sings rock and roll just as well as she sings those things. But yeah, the choice of songs was a joint effort on both our halves.
That's excellent. So this is also for Peter. Do you have a favorite story about working with Bobby Williams? Not Robin. Robbie.
I've never worked, well actually I have worked with Robbie Williams once. that I think it is confusing because I did do a whole album with Robin Williams. But which one are you talking about?
Robbie.
Robbie. I only worked with Robbie once. I was producing the music for a film about Cole Porter called The Lovely. The director, Owen Winkler, was a friend, and he asked me to help with the music because there were a lot of stars playing stars of the Cole Porter era in the movie. And we were trying to do a lot of recording live. And Robbie Williams was extremely nice, but he had completely under-rehearsed. He showed up, was supposed to lip sync to this pre-recording he'd done, or sing it live, and he completely failed to learn it properly, and they had to postpone the whole shoot. So, all I can tell you, he was really nice, really charming, but a bit used to kind of being able to wander in and do what he's told. And people assumed that just as an actor would have, he'd really learned his stuff and was ready to shoot, and he wasn't. But that was the only time I worked with him, and it was not entirely satisfactory.
So this question was specifically for Leland, but I'm actually going to change it to be for each of you. Of all of the wonderful artists you've worked with, which one or ones have had the greatest impact on your work and or your life? So we'll start with you, Leland.
That's really a hard question for me, because I've worked in so many genres. Still one of my favorite albums that I ever worked on, and it stands the test of time to this day, was Billy Cobham's Spectrum, which kind of set the tone for that fusion period of we cut that in '73, and we did the whole album in 2 days. And I was thrilled last night because the gig we played last night, Ron Carter came to the gig, and Ron did 2 of the tracks on Spectrum, and I played on all the rest of it. So it was a chance for us to get back together again. But that was a real. It's one of these ones where there's a bass line, a song called Stratus on it, and if I go anywhere in the world and sit down and start playing that, guys jump all over it. They want to play that song, so it had a huge impact. But there's, in all genres. I mean, it's certainly the stuff with Linda and James have had huge impacts. I mean, and before I go on with that, so I'll let them answer. I just want to say I'm so excited to be out here with Kate. To be doing this project with her after all these years is so great. And she's just evolved. And I have to say from the bottom of my heart, Peter's probably the best producer I've ever worked with in my entire career. His sensibility in the studio, how he works with musicians, how he picks material, his ears are so good that anytime I get a chance to do a project with him it's one of the greatest gifts you could ever ask for as a player.
Thank you so much. That's sweet. Thank you. You go next?
Yeah, well, I think that working with Peter truly has been the highlight of my entire musical experience. Just like what Leland said, he has impeccable taste in terms of the songs, and he knows just what kind of song to pick for a singer. And he listens. The thing that I find really extraordinary about him is that you can have a suggestion, and he actually pays attention and really listens to what you have to say, and is willing to give things a try. And watching him work, he's highly focused, he's utterly prepared, and yet he's willing to go, as the wind blows, if he's inspired by something. And I've loved working with him, and also the people that he gathers around him to work on the records. They're always just the very, very best. And I guess the other person that is kind of on the top of that list is my brother James. Singing with him and watching him work when he produced a record for me, it was just very inspiring, very, very impressive. And he's just a very loving person, and I appreciated working with him as well.
In my case, it's a little hard to say. I don't think I could really pin it down to one particular person or artist or musician who'd have the most influence on me, because I've been very lucky. And you know, if I credit myself with anything, it would be the ability to see an opportunity and to grab it with both hands. Because you know, the importance in my career and my life of, you know, Paul McCartney, who wrote our first worldwide hit, of James Taylor, who, you know, rang my doorbell in 1968 and introduced himself to me in my flat in London. And that was just because I'd been in a band with this other great guitar player, Danny Korchmar, who backed Peter and Gordon on the road, and he was subsequently in a band with his childhood friend, James Taylor. So when that band broke up and James was going to London, Cooch gave him my phone number. You know, all I did was invite James in, listen to him, realize he was a genius, and ask him if he wanted a record deal, because I was working with the Beatles on their new label. He said, yes, please, I'd love one. And that was that. So, and then I, you know, bet my career on his and became his manager. Same thing when somebody said to me, well, you should go down to the bitter end. There's this incredibly good girl singer down there who I think you'll like. She's one of the most amazing singers I've ever heard, and she also happens to, you know, sing barefoot in really short shorts and is insanely hot. So I went down there immediately, and it was all true. And I met Linda, and actually, it must be said, Kate comes into the picture here too, because when I first heard Linda, she asked me if I would manage her, and I said no, very politely, because I was managing Kate at the time, and I thought that, you know, managing a couple of girl singers might be a bit weird, and, you know, it's sort of conflict of interest in a way. And so actually when Kate decided to sort of temporarily at least quit show business and live in a teepee, you actually spoke to Linda, right? I believe.
I did. I had heard the story about how Linda and I had become friends. We were spending time in Los Angeles when I was making that Sister Kate record. So among all the other amazing artists who were just on the cusp of these incredible careers, we were all in Los Angeles at that time, and I got a chance to become friendly with a lot of them, and one of them was Linda. And Peter had told me that, and we had discussed this request that Linda had for Peter to manage her, and that he decided that having two girl singers, you know, it might be somewhat of a conflict. And so when I bowed out of the music business, I called up Linda and I said, you know, you really should talk to Peter again, and I think I might have spoken with Peter as well. And I said, you two should really work together. But the one thing I didn't do was ask for a percentage.
That's right, yeah, you should have indeed.
Anyway, so that's my big claim to fame. But you know, they went on to make such incredible records and wonderful songs, and a great career that she's had and enjoyed, and I've enjoyed every moment of her career, and Peter's with her as well.
And so in terms of influential artists, you know, as I say, I can't pick one, but if you've got Paul McCartney and Linda Ronstadt and James Taylor on the list, it's a good list.
All right, this is a question from Leland. I have to ask this. It's from Dan DeMars from Norwich, Vermont. He says he made it.
Great, Dan. Dan is a fabulous luthier. He makes beautiful instruments, and we've been friends for years, so I'm glad you made it.
Yes, me too. So he would like to know, how are Marcello and Rossano?
Those are my basset hounds. I am missing them dearly by being on the road, but they're doing really great. They're just a couple of 2-year-old knuckleheads, and I'm just infatuated looking down right now here at this beautiful service dog down here.
And they're frequently overdressed.
Yeah, exactly.
Leland's wonderful wife Maureen takes these pictures of the dogs all dressed up in the appropriate clothes for the season. You can look forward to her emails.
They have better clothes than I do.
That's awesome. Here's a question for Kate. Would the ukuleles like to come play with the Unlikely Strummers?
Oh, that's a great idea. We've definitely got to get the ukuleles. I have a group of gals that I play with. There's 5 of us, and we call ourselves the ukuleles. And it's all for great fun. And we've recorded a song on the album, actually, the new record that was written by my nephew Isaac Taylor about the Gay Head Lighthouse. And I think that, you know, if the ukuleles were ever inclined to go on the road, this is where we'd come to hang out with you guys and play. That would be wonderful. And now that you are champion ukulele players, we have to get to practicing so we can step up. But that would be wonderful. Thank you.
I would like to see that right on this very stage.
That would be great. Thank you. I'll let them know.
All right, so we're going to end with, we have to end with the Beatles question. Who was the easiest Beatle to work with?
Well, I would say Paul. I knew Paul the best, of course, because we were, at the time, living next door to each other on the top floor of my parents' house. So I knew Paul better than I knew the others, so I suppose they would be the easiest to work with. And unquestionably, John was the hardest. I mean, he was capable of being, you know, very sort of sardonic, and you could never quite tell when he was kidding and whether he wasn't. But you know, the funny thing is, of course, that like most cliches, the traditional Beatle analysis, you know, where Paul's the charming one, George is the quiet one, John's the kind of capable of being a bit angry one, and Ringo's the funny one who everyone loves. Like most cliches, they're true. You know, that was pretty much it in a nutshell. And so John could be tricky, you know, but he also, of course, could be searingly brilliant and one of the greatest songwriters of the century. So, but and I didn't. It's not as if I worked in the studio. The only Beatle I've ever produced actually was Ringo. Much later, I did do an album with Ringo, which was fantastic. He was a pleasure to work with. And what's so great is, you know, that he sounds like Ringo when he plays, you know. And the thing is, I'll tell you something about musicians that's interesting. People get so hung up on gear and stuff, you know, and well, how did they get that sound? How did he play? What kind of heads were those? This, that, and the other. Or with guitar players, it's like about the strings and the this and the amps, and you know, and that really doesn't make much difference. It really doesn't. I mean, when Ringo sits down at a drum kit, whether it's his drum kit or someone else's, and starts playing, the way he hits the hi-hat, the way he hits the snare drum, the way he feels the groove, makes it Ringo, you know. The whole, the equipment stuff gets so overrated. I remember when this is a digression, but I do that a lot. I remember I never did one session with Eric Clapton. It was for a benefit record with Cher, Chrissie Hynde, and Nana Cherry. And I cut the track in LA and was overdubbing all of them in London. I ran into Eric at lunch the day before, and I'd already put a guitar solo on the track in LA, but when I saw Eric, I was mentally erasing it already. And I said, Eric, would you come and play on this track that I'm doing with these 3 wonderful women? He said, yes. And as I was leaving lunch, I said, oh, you know, do you want, shall I get you some equipment or something? What? He said, you know, an amp. And I went, okay. So I got like a Fender Twin and an AC30 or something. And I swayed, plugged into the nearest one, you know, twiddle the knobs, and sounded exactly like Eric Clapton, you know. And you realize that's what counts. How did I get onto that subject? Sorry, where did we start? But it is really true. You hear a great musician. If Leland picks up some cheap, crappy bass, it'll sound brilliant. You know, it really will. Then it was. And because of that, people give him these fabulous, expensive ones.
Sure. Well, first of all, wonderful to see Lee, and thank you for the wonderful work. A question for each of you. Can you take us through what was life like as a child in the Taylor household? And then Peter, you seem to be a little bit reticent about giving too many details about your sister's adult life. We all feel like we knew her up until she and Paul broke up. So I'd love to know what was her adult life like? So how about your childhood in the Taylor
Sure.
and yours with
Yeah.
your sisters?
Well, growing up with 4 brothers, and I was the only girl and in the middle, and our mother had had the 5 kids in 6 years. So we were all very close. We grew up in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and we'd go up to Martha's Vineyard in the summertime. And we had this charmed and beautiful life. It wasn't always, easy. I mean, just, any family probably has, challenges, but there was a closeness that we felt that I think even though today when we don't see each other for long periods of time, I think we still feel this. Livingston calls us circus folk because we all were drawn to performing and to the stage, and our mother had come to, she used to like to tell the story about how she came to a junior high school talent show, and James was playing in it, and I was playing in it, and Alex did something in it, and she came home to my dad, who was, at the house and didn't go. She said, "You really missed something amazing. Your children are extraordinary." And I think that being being so tightly knit like that, maybe one of the things that drew us to the stage was that it was the only way we could get a word in edgewise. But it just was. They're a wonderful bunch of guys. My parents were brilliant and very let us kind of encouraged us in whatever path we wanted to take. And the brothers are brilliant, and it's just been kind of very charmed and very special. Thank you for asking.
Thank you, yes. No, I'm not reticent about my sister Janie at all. I'm very proud of her and love her very much. I mean, indeed, I'm grateful you for asking about her life since the 60s, because of course, what is a little weird is, when you've been a very successful actress in Britain and still are, when you've been married for 30 years and have wonderful children and all that stuff, and the majority of questions you ever get asked, very many of them, are about a 2-year friendship, back in the 60s when you were going out with Paul McCartney. So, that's the bit that where there may be a degree of reticence. Because Jane, she continues, her career's done very well, and indeed, between you and me, that was one of the issues, with trying to be a girlfriend of Paul McCartney's, when you have a career and a job, which he didn't really want anybody to have. She was on tour with the Royal Shakespeare Company during that same period. And so, I don't know if any of you know, she's married to, and has been for 30-something years, to a man called Leland Sklar, who is a genius, who is the political cartoonist for the Sunday Times in London, and does a lot of stuff for the New Yorker as well, and is known to music fans as the person who did all the animation for the Pink Floyd. All the marching hammers and all that stuff is all Gerald. He's a brilliant and remarkable man, and Jane's a wonderful actor and has, 3 kids, and everything is great.
Also, she's an incredible cake decorator.
That's right, she is.
Yeah, she's got folks that are unbelievable. She's one of the most gifted cake decorators I've ever seen.
Yeah, she had a whole company that made cakes and decorations, and the books are great. I wonder if they have any. There's a couple of books of Jane Asher's cakes.
Peter, you produced 2 of my favorite songwriters that nobody else is going to talk about tonight. John Stewart and Tony Joe White.
Absolutely.
What do you remember from work?
I love them both. John Stewart was a brilliant, hilarious guy. I don't know how many of you know him. He was one of the Kingston Trio, and then he became a singer-songwriter in his own right. He wrote Hey Dream Believer. Sorry, I'm a believer in Daydream Believer backwards. But he wrote that, and he was a terrific guy. I liked him very much. I did one album with him called Willard, and which I don't think you played on, did you? Because mostly Brian Garofalo. He was super cool. And Tony Joe White is fantastic. What a great guy. Great songwriter, Rainy Night in Georgia, quite apart from Polk Salad Annie. A wonderful songwriter. Super soulful and incredibly cool guy. I liked him very much indeed. He was wonderful. That's a record I did actually with some of my other favorite musicians who had a great chance to work with them, because Duck Dunn played on it and people like that. I did it in Memphis, so it was really exciting. Duck Dunn being a legendary and great bass player, a sort of minimalist bass player, but perfect.
That is awesome. My husband's favorite song is actually Polk Salad Annie.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody had ever heard of it, and he had to find it.
Gage has got your Grammy. Brilliant.
All right. So we are going to, if you have any questions, you can ask them in the signing line, because we want to make sure that we get you guys out of here at a reasonable time, have you signed. So what we would like to do at this point is
Take a picture of everybody
take a
giving me
picture
a
of
finger.
everybody giving you a finger. Exactly. So I turn the lights on. Cassie can take it, or who's going to take it? You guys want to fill up the front row?
Lee's got it. Off we go. Hands up. Fingers up.
You know, it looks so good because everybody's finger is well lit. Somebody sing happy birthday will blow out those candles and let's.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Sure. Okay. We can be ready. We're still fingering.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Leland.